Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I'll be doing a review of Season 1 of the US version of The Circle, which is a show that I have watched the original UK version of and really enjoyed. I've actually done a couple videos on it already on the channel, but coming into the US version here, I really didn't know what to expect. I mean, obviously it is the same production company as the UK version, but I didn't know if they were going to try to cater it towards an American audience, and for the most part, they didn't. It's exactly the same show, just with American people in it instead of British people. I think along with that came kind of similar flaws that I have with the original version, but then some extra stuff added in due to its release format, the shortening of the season, with still having a decently large cast. So it's not without its flaws, but I do think Season 1 here was a great first outing for the series, and I feel like it has a lot of potential moving forward, which is kind of similar opinions to what I have with the UK version. Now, we will talk about each episode one by one, but let's start off by talking about the cast, which I thought was really fun. I mean, it's probably my favorite cast of The Circle out of the 3 seasons that I've watched. And I think the casting is the main reason why I enjoyed this season so much. I mean, there's so many great characters, from Shuby to Sammy to Joey to Chris to Karen to Seabird. I mean, pretty much everyone. I mean, I think there were no real complete duds on the season. I do think there are a couple people that don't get as developed as I would have liked them to, but again, that has to do more so with the format of this season than the casting of these people. Like, I think people like Shawn and Bill and Ed and Tammy weren't given enough time to be on the show to make us really care about them, but I do think they were interesting casting to begin with and could have been a lot more interesting if they were put in towards the beginning of the game. Now, obviously with a US cast, we also got an American host in Michelle Buteau, I think is her name. She was fine. I mean, I personally like the UK narrator so much more than her. I mean, she's competent, even though I found her interviews at the end of the season very boring and awkward, but we'll talk about that later. So now let's just jump right into the episode, starting with the premiere, which for me took a while to get going. I mean, the editing was exactly the same as the UK version. I mean, literally beat for beat, it was the exact same thing. And again, you should expect that considering it's the same production team, it's the same set. They literally flew everyone to the UK to film this show, to film in the exact same building as Season 2 of the UK version. Again, it's the exact same thing. I mean, I did find the first half of the episode to be very over the top. I felt like a lot of the people coming into the game, they were told to like be super extra when coming in. So we saw a lot of like screaming from Joey, and I think he literally says, "Yeah, buddy," like 6 times within the first 10 minutes of the show. And then Alana just seemed really fake when coming in, and like just all these people, I just felt like they were told to be over the top, and I didn't particularly like that aspect of it. But by the halfway point in the episode where everyone started communicating with each other, I think it made me really like this cast. Again, right from the get-go, I really enjoyed a lot of them. I really like Shuby, I like Chris, I like Sammy. I thought Joey was really over the top, but I did find him really funny here. A difference I did notice between this and the UK version, though, was I do feel like there was a bit more of an American mindset in terms of the gameplay, at least for this beginning part of this season. It's kind of funny how this actually fades as the season moves on, where by the end of the season, they're all talking about loyalty and honesty and all this stuff, while at the beginning of the season here, they're talking about alliances and making deals and all that stuff, especially coming from Antonio. Antonio was someone that we saw make a lot of deals with different people like Mercedes and Sammy. We also had Seaburn and Shuby make an alliance right off the bat as well. I also found it funny when the ratings were revealed to see Antonio get pissed off when he ends up being an influencer. But again, I think that was just showing that he did have a strategic mindset of the game, and he knew that that was going to put a target on his back. But again, I did find it impressive that he did pretty much orchestrate this boot here. I mean, he was the one that was pushing the strategy forward to eliminate Alana as the first person here. And again, Alana goes home, and I had a pretty good idea that that was going to happen. I mean, the edit was extremely negative towards her, despite her getting 3rd in the ratings. So obviously, again, it was expected that she was probably going to be the first boot. I thought Alana was a really fun character, though. I mean, I don't understand her to keep on talking about, like, saying, "Oh, I don't want to be judged for being pretty," and all that stuff. And then she spends the entire episode talking about how she's a model and how she turned down Playboy. Like, it was just weird. But again, I saw her getting taken out here as a strategic move where, again, she got the highest rating of any person that wasn't an influencer, and I think she was looked at as a threat because of that. Now let's talk about episode 2, which was pretty solid. I mean, we did get to know a lot of these characters better, but then again, nothing really important happened to the game outside of Miranda joining the game, and we didn't get to really see her interact with others here. until episode 3, but there were fun moments here. I mean, and Joey and Antonio's conversation, where I found it hilarious that Joey was like so pissed at Antonio for eliminating Alana, so he ends up being like really passive aggressive to Antonio during this conversation, but at the same time he kept on talking about how, oh, I'm just trying to make friends with him. I mean, this episode was fun, but overall, though, very unimportant to the overall grand scheme of the show. Episode 3 was another solid episode. I mean, Miranda joined the group and started flirting with everyone, and that was kind of funny. I mean, we saw Joey go to work on building bonds with Shuby and Chris, and he continued his rivalry with Antonio, which I thought was a pretty fun aspect of these first few episodes. But we also got the ratings, which had some surprises. I mean, both the influencers from first round dropped significantly here, which again, I thought was a sign that we were going to get a very strategic season. It's just that I feel like once more and more new players got added to the game, that part of the gameplay was just completely dropped in favor of just getting rid of the new people. But what I did like here was that this like massive fall from grace for Antonio, where I do think Antonio gets a really great arc over the course of this season, where obviously he was like the biggest player in the beginning, and I think he kind of just drops the ball here, where I think he forgets to maintain some of his relationships. But at the end of the day, Chris and Shuby come out on top, become the influencers, and have to block someone, and that's where we end episode 3. Now for episode 4, where we started off with the blocking, and unsurprisingly, Antonio is blocked. And it is kind of funny that happens from Shuby, who is the person that Antonio kept on talking up as like his favorite person. But again, I just feel like he played way too hard in the beginning. I kind of feel like he was like the first HOH on Big Brother, where like he gained a lot of power at the very beginning, but I think he plays too hard too fast, and immediately after he loses power, he just gets taken out. I do think this was a really fun arc to watch. Obviously, he was a strategic player, but outside of that, I do think he probably brought the least entertainment to the table out of the people remaining for elimination. So I wasn't that upset to see him go here. And again, I just think his arc over these first 4 episodes was pretty fun to watch. But after that, the episode was fine. I mean, there was cake making, which was something that the UK version did, and it was fine. Again, I found it weird that the winner got to post a video, which is something that hasn't happened in the UK version. I did find Antonio's warning during his final message pretty interesting, as it caused a lot of paranoia, where Mercedes had to lie to other people about not meeting up with Antonio. I do think this is a major factor in what causes Mercedes' downfall in the later episodes. But this aspect of Antonio being able to out people during his goodbye message is something I don't particularly love. I don't feel like this happened in the UK version for season 2. From what I understand, season 1 of the US here was actually filmed before season 2 of the UK version, so maybe they learned their lesson there and stopped that for season 2 of the UK, because this did play a major factor on this season. This caused a lot of paranoia, especially when this was proven correct, when Mercedes was found out to be a catfish. Episode ends with the introduction to Alex, and we'll have a lot to talk about him in a second. But yeah, that's where this first week of episodes wrapped up. Again, if you don't know, that these were released 4 episodes per week for 3 weeks, so essentially a total of 12 episodes. And again, I really like this first batch of episodes. I thought it was probably my 4 favorite episodes of the season. I still have issues with like how they end each episode. I wish there was a more solid structure to these episodes than just like having random cliffhangers here and there. But overall, again, I really enjoyed this first 4 episodes. But now let's talk about the second block of episodes, which starting off with episode 5, which I found to be the weakest episode so far. I mean, again, there was a week gap in between these episodes, and I feel like a lot of the momentum from the first 4 episodes was kind of lost by this point, but I still enjoyed it. I mean, even though, like, again, the second block of episodes wasn't as strong in my opinion, I don't think they were bad. There were a lot of fun moments within this. But episode 5 here, Adam gets introduced to the other players, and I found them to be really creepy. I mean, he was being very forward with his flirting, but also talking about his wife all the time. It was just really strange to see. I did like how Miranda was the most interested in him, but then was the one not chosen to be in the private chat with him. That was kind of funny. And Seaburn was really funny during all this stuff, where she's trying to act all innocent and everything. I also found the Sammy flirting with Joey scene to be pretty funny in this episode, where she was competing with Miranda to being the first one to get Joey to send a dirty emoji, and I thought that was fun. The hashtag game that they played in this episode had some pretty fun results, and that led to the cliffhanger of the episode where everyone called Mercedes out being a catfish, and Joey's like about to respond to her, and then we get the cut. Again, like, I'm not a big fan of the non-structuring of these episodes, but I do think out of the cliffhangers, this is probably one of the better ones. Now to episode 6, where the Joey comment leads to nothing. Obviously, he does end up calling her out, but like, there's no real major effect to that anyway. And then we get the ratings with Shuby and Sammy ending up as the influencers. And I thought at this point it was pretty obvious Mercedes was going home. And she does. I mean, she does visit Chris as predicted. And again, it was fun. It was fun to see everyone's reactions to her being a catfish. But I thought Mercedes, aka Karen, was great TV. I mean, her playing a catfish and trying to cover her tracks was really fun to watch. And just her on her own was a really fun character with a really infectious energy, and her being really confrontational at points, and her displaying her real opinions while also lying to everyone about her identity. I just thought there was a fun sort of dynamic there. So I was a bit sad to see her go. But after that, we got some fun moments like the workout scene where Shuby is doing push-ups while everyone else is just pretending to work out. And the Miranda and Joey conversation building off of the game that she had with Sammy where Joey didn't know what an eggplant emoji was and Miranda ends up winning the little game there. And we end the episode with 2 new people for some reason. Again, this episode was good. It's a solid... I mean, every episode this season so far has been solid. It's just that I feel like the pacing during these middle episodes were a bit off, but then again, I feel like it's just a circle in general. Episode 7 starts with us meeting Shawn and Bill, who were both just fine. I mean, I didn't find them too interesting, but I didn't find them completely boring either. I think the problem, again, the biggest problem here at this point in the season is that they're introducing people, but they don't have the time to develop those people, so they just come in and they're pretty much just fodder. I mean, you know that they're going to be booted before the original people. So while I do think Shawn and Bill could have been more interesting characters if they were introduced earlier, by this point it was just too late for them to even be interesting to the viewer of the show. But they get introduced as leaders during trivia night, which I thought was fine. I mean, it was funny to see Shuby mess up on a pretty easy question. I mean, like, how do you not know that the Liberty Bell and Rocky are in Philadelphia? But whatever. But the winners got family videos. And I've talked about this before. I don't care. I really don't. I mean, they really just bore me. Obviously, like, at least you do get to know more about the person that's getting the family videos through these videos, but outside of that, I just find them really boring. During this episode, we also get Rebecca or Seaburn getting caught in the period conversation, and that was really funny. The episode ends with the ratings results, where Joey finally becomes an influencer along with Shuby, but this time we get a twist, where the influencers get to pick 2 people each to save, and the remaining person gets eliminated. And that's where the episode ends. I thought this episode was fine. There are fun in moments here and there, but again, a lot of filler. Again, kind of haunts this entire section of the season. Now for episode 8, which was a better episode, we started off with the elimination, obviously, where it really comes down to Adam or Miranda, and Shuby gets the pick of who to eliminate, and he eliminates Miranda. And I thought Miranda was fun. I mean, she started off just flirting with everyone. I found that funny. But then as she stayed in there, I really liked seeing her relationships with, like, Sammy and Joey. Speaking of which, her leaving the show and, like, making out with Joey was just kind of weird. Again, that was also another really strange thing. And it seemed like the Circle themselves really loved that because they, like, showed it multiple times in the finale. But then we get the final member of the cast to join the game, and we get Ed and his mom Tammy playing just as Ed. I mean, I think this is a good concept. I think this is a fun thing for them to do, of bringing in a pre-existing relationship, play together on the Circle. I mean, that was an idea that was there for season 2 of the Circle that they didn't really execute on. They didn't have strangers play as one person in season 2 of the Circle. In the UK, I'm talking about. Again, for them to go for a pre-existing relationship playing as one here in the US, I thought was an interesting idea. It doesn't work out. It really doesn't, but we'll talk about that later. During this episode, we also get the painting challenge. That was a lot of fun from the UK version, but here I just thought it was fine. Biggest drama that was there came out of Bill's picture of Adam, and even that wasn't that bad. But then we end the episode with Shawn deciding to tell everyone that she's a catfish, and that's where we leave off for week 2. Again, like a solid batch of episodes, but just not as strong as that initial bunch, in my opinion. Again, kind of plagued with adding in new characters that we don't really care about, and also a lot of filler in the middle section of this block. I mean, it was fine, but I just think that's negatives of the Circle in general. Now for the final block of episodes, starting with episode 9, which started with Shawn revealing her real self. And, I mean, okay. I mean, it was good from a game sense. I do think it garnered her a lot of trust within people like Sammy and Rebecca, but I didn't love it from a sense that, why is Shawn being able to show more pictures of herself while everyone else can only show a new picture whenever they win a new profile picture or anything like that. I just found it kind of weird. Now, I do think they probably would have given this opportunity to any catfish because, I mean, Mercedes had a folder of her real self in her photos. So, I mean, I do think this is something that production was allowing any catfish to do, but I do think it's a bit unfair when the people who are playing as themselves don't have the opportunity to do anything like this. But then after that, we got the ratings, and it was announced that the lowest scoring person would be instantly blocked, and to no surprise, it ends up being Bill, who I thought was fine. I mean, he didn't bring much to the table. He was kind of just fodder for the show. But I do think that's actually kind of a shame because I do think we see semblances of a personality there that would have been really interesting if he had joined from the very beginning. I do think he could have become a likable presence if he had been there since the beginning. But because of him coming in so late, we just barely knew who he was. But then after his elimination, we get the same twist from the UK version where the influencers, who were Rebecca, who finally came in first, and Shuby, they have to decide a second person to go home. Really, it came down to Adam or Shawn, unsurprisingly, as the two new people. But something I did find kind of surprising was that Rebecca ends up deciding to vote out Adam. And again, I think this is a moment where Shawn revealing herself greatly benefited her game, where she does gain enough trust with Rebecca to stay around another round. I think this was a terrible decision for Rebecca. I think this just makes it so clear that she's a catfish. But like always, we get Adam getting to meet up with one of the eliminated contestants, and he does pick Rebecca, aka Seaburn. And this is a hilarious scene. I mean, where the two catfishes meet up and they just go into hysterics and they start hugging each other. I just thought it was really funny. And I did really like Adam or Alex as a TV character. I mean, he did get really creepy at points, and I feel like he was just like living out a personal fantasy of his, but he had so many funny interactions and was openly mocked by the narrator at almost every opportunity. I just thought it was really fun to have him on the show. We later get Shawn updating her profile to show her real self to everyone, which again, the show tried to show this as her being strong, but like, wouldn't it have been stronger if she had done this from the beginning? Well, whatever. I mean, we get the end of the episode with the goodbye message from the blocked players, and we got some fun reactions from both of them where obviously everyone found out Adam was a catfish, but also Bill was like really pissed off that people were lying to him. And overall, I mean, I did think this was a pretty fun episode, but a really jam-packed one with the ratings and blockings taking up a good chunk of the episode. And that's kind of my issue with this block of episodes as a whole. I mean, I think episodes 9 and 10 were so jam-packed with the ratings and maybe like one filler game in between to kind of like maybe change up the possible ratings, but these were jam-packed episodes. And then we get to episodes 11 and 12, which were like so slow paced. It's like, I really feel like this show has a real big pacing issue, not even just in the US version, also in the UK version, but I feel like this US version really exemplifies that even more, where we start this finale week with more players than we did at the beginning of the season. Now for episode 10, which started off with the State Your Case game, which seemed to just be there again just to throw some drama in before the ratings, and we did get some. I mean, Sammy and Shawn got into some arguments, Shuby and Chris, same thing, and there was a lot of drama with Rebecca over her being called out by both Ed and Joey. But we get to the rankings, and I was pretty surprised that Joey rated Shuby so low. I mean, Joey seemed like a very genuine sort of guy, but I do like that he started to play strategically towards the end game here. But then we also learned that they are using the super influencer twists from the UK version. They've used it in both versions of the UK show, where somebody gets the sole vote to block and is able to do it anonymously, and Joey ends up being the person in first, and he had a real opportunity to take out a massive threat, someone like a Chris or Rebecca or even a Shuby. But then again, I don't know if that's the right move for him, but he does end up blocking Shawn instead, which was kind of underwhelming from a gameplay standpoint. Obviously, this is kind of the predicted boot here. I mean, either her or Ed, and it would have been a much bigger moment if it had been one of those other people, but at the end of the day, I do think this was probably the right move for him. And overall, I mean, I didn't love Shawn on this season. I mean, she was just there, kind of like a Bill. She did get more screen time due to her storyline. But I don't know, like the way I sense this is that I feel like a lot of it was planned from the very beginning, and I feel like a lot of it was done as a way to gain sympathy. I also don't love how indignant she was with it, and I didn't find her entertaining on the show at all outside of that. So, I mean, I don't feel like she brought that much to the table. And again, just like Bill and just like Ed, she was kind of just brought in as fodder at the very end of the game. But now for episode 11, which started off with the most likely game, which again was in there just to have some drama before the actual ratings. But this really had no effect on the game as a whole. I mean, immediately after that, we got the final ratings, which I was very surprised by. I did not think that they were going to do a final ratings at the final 6. In the UK version, season 1 ended at the final 4, season 2 ended at the final 5. But here, to have the ratings at the final 6 was really strange. And I don't love that it was this early, but I will say it was interesting to see, again, Joey playing tactfully, at least thinking about playing tactfully, only for him to change his mind. But I was surprised that pretty much no one played tactfully. Everyone voted genuinely, which is something we haven't seen in the UK version up to this point. But the ratings come in, and we get the announcement that the one with the lowest score will be blocked immediately, and to no surprise, Ed was blocked. I mean, the only non-original player left. He then gets to visit someone, and I found it weird that he decided to visit Sammy for some reason. I mean, you would have assumed that he would have gone to see Rebecca or even a Joey, but I wasn't expecting him to see Sammy. But it was funny to see Sammy like hiding in the cabinet for a second there. And it was fun to see the reveal that Ed was playing with his mom and people's reactions to that. But let's talk about Ed and Tammy. And Ed, I thought, was a complete douchebag. I think he had some fun moments on the show when he called some people out and was always energetic whenever he was speaking. But again, we didn't really get to know him that much. I do think if he was there from the beginning, he could have had a turn like Joey, where he starts off as a douchebag, but then he starts to become a nice guy. But he didn't really have the time for that, so he just kind of is a douchebag. And I mean that in an endearing way. Again, I found him entertaining because of that. But for Tammy, I just thought she brought nothing to the table. I mean, Tammy was someone that was supposed to be the mature one out of her and Ed, when I feel like in reality, she was probably less mature than Ed somehow. I feel like all the suggestions that she would have for Ed were just completely ignored. She really brought nothing to the table in really any aspect. So I really don't know why she was there, outside of the fact that they wanted a mom-son duo for the show. But whatever, they go home. And then we waste the rest of the time on the episode with more family videos, because they need to waste time to make this episode a bit longer. And we end the episode with the announcement that everyone will meet face to face, and we get the cliffhanger right as Seaburn is about to enter the room with Shuby. But now for the finale, here we go. We get Shuby and Seaburn finally meeting, and it was fine. I mean, Shuby took it pretty well in the moment, I feel like. I mean, I was kind of worried that he was going to take it hard, but he did come off as understanding. I really did like this moment. However, I do feel like in reality, I wouldn't be surprised if Shuby was actually really hurt by this. I mean, we could see him like making digs during the dinner at points. It did feel like he wasn't as close with Seaburn as he was with like Joey and Sammy after this moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually took it pretty hard, but just didn't show it in the moment. Sammy's reaction to finding out that Seaburn was a catfish was pretty fun as well. I like Chris being so happy that Rebecca was a catfish. That was great. I love the celebration when Joey entered the room and everyone found out Joey was real. So that was cool. But then we cut to the host talking to each of the eliminated contestants and eventually to the finalists. And I mean, this was so boring. And I mean, this is a very British thing to do. They do this a lot on British reality TV, where they spend a lot of time interviewing the people from the show. And I just find this so boring here on The Circle, especially when we're doing interview after interview after interview. Like, over half the episode was interviews. And it was just so dull and such a bad way to end this season, in my opinion. It would have been much better if we had sort of like a round table where all the players were able to have a conversation with each other. Kind of similar to what Big Brother tries to do, but then fails at that also. I feel like having this one-on-one interview for like 5 minutes each was just really dull for me. But then we get to the results, and I predicted them exactly right. I was pretty confident that Joey was going to be the winner. I was pretty confident Shuby was going to be second, Sammy was going to be third. I think that Chris and Rebecca could have flipped back and forth, but really, I mean, I had it right. I mean, this was pretty predictable for me, especially once Ed was involved in these final ratings. I do feel like Ed, it was pretty clear that Joey was his number one, and I do think that greatly benefited my belief in Joey winning here. I do think Joey wins even without Ed, as Joey was Shuby and Chris's number ones, and also was relatively high for Sammy. So, I mean, not surprising Joey won here, but it could have been a bit more interesting for me. But let's talk about the finalists themselves, starting with Rebecca, or Seaburn, who was a really fun character on the show. I mean, being the main catfish of the season, I mean, I found him trying to blend in as a woman to be really fun. Probably the most fun aspect of his character, but I also found how innocent Seaburn was playing this, how like really innocent he looked at his girlfriend as. Like, it was just really kind of weird. And his relationship with Adam was just really funny. I do think Seaburn himself was a really fun character on his own right, where he was just super over the top with all of his reactions to things. And how he was like actually turning into the character of Rebecca when he was talking to the circle was just really funny. Chris was pretty fun during the season as well. I mean, I really loved his one-liners, his upbeat personality. But to be honest, he was probably my least favorite out of this final 5, even though I do think he brought a good chunk to the season. Now, Sammy was my initial favorite after the first episode, and throughout the rest of the season, I enjoyed her as well. I mean, her reactions to her getting flirted on was pretty funny. I feel like she was probably the most complex character of the season, probably the most complex person of this entire cast. I find it really strange how in the finale, she talks about how her strategy was to friend zone a lot of the guys, and that wasn't really something that was talked about earlier on. I feel like if it was, a lot of these like moments where she's like gagging over people flirting with her and everything, that would have made a lot more sense. Shuby was another really fun character on this season as well, obviously a fan favorite. I did like seeing him being really naive to other people's intentions and his relationships with Rebecca and Joey. Those were really fun to watch, and to see him go from last place in the ratings in the first round to an influencer almost every round after that, it was a fun arc. I think he's a great character for the show. Now let's talk about the winner of the season, Joey, who had a bit of a rocky start. I think his first episode, he was like so over the top, and I think too much so. It really came off as fake to me, but after that, I really found him fascinating. I mean, just the way he talks is hilarious to me. I just thought he was just so much fun during those first batch of episodes with all of his character moments with like Shuby and Sammy and Antonio. Like, those were great moments for him as a character. But during the back 2/3 of the episodes, I do think his character moments start to slow down, and he starts to become a more like nice and caring guy. I mean, he did have to cut some people that he did build strong bonds with, but surprisingly, I do feel like he was the one to think of the game in the most strategic way out of the people that were left at the end game. And though he rarely acted on that, I do think he is the best winner of the circle from a gameplay standpoint so far, and it's not really close. And he was always in the in-group the entire season. He was the leader for a couple of the blockings. I was actually very surprised with how good he was at building strong bonds with a wider range of people. Even when new players would join the season, he was so good at building bonds with a lot of these people, like Miranda, Bill, Shawn, I mean, even Ed. I mean, like, these people he was just building good bonds with. And he was also sticking with his bonds from earlier in the game with like people like Sammy, Chris, and Shuby. I do think he was a good game player, and I also think he was a good character. I mean, I think his win was just a very satisfying conclusion to this season. So overall, I did really enjoy this first season of the Circle US. I mean, it had a really fun cast, some hilarious moments, some threads of interesting gameplay that could be expanded on with the future season, which I wouldn't be surprised if we get. But the Circle is just a fun show to watch, and if you enjoy the US version, I would recommend that you go and watch the UK versions, as again, it's pretty much the exact same show, and you would probably like it as well. I do have some complaints with the pacing of the show and how much smaller in scale it is from the UK versions, but I did really enjoy it. And I am excited to see more from the US and UK versions of the show in the future. So that's my review of the Circle US Season 1. Thank you for watching.